Playing as a vampire is one of the more challenging aspects to Ultimate Skyrim Requiem. The world hates you, you're hunted, enthralled by blood, and forced to sequester yourself away from the sun. To combat this is a vampire guide, which is to show you how to get started and what challenges you'll face as a vampire. Enjoy. Before getting started with your vampire playthrough, you'll want to do some initial setup with your Ultimate Skyrim MCM. Open up your Ultimate Skyrim, then click on Main, click on Disease, and then select Vampire. This will allow you to start the game as a fully fledged vampire. Next, you want to select your time of day to night, and the reason why we want to select our time of day to night is because in the daytime, you'll receive a massive debuff to your maximum hit points to the point of getting killed. To avoid this, we'll need to set our time of day to night. Now, the starting location. It is highly recommended you start somewhere in the wilderness, as starting in a city, town, inn, or jail will make the guards and the townsfolk attack you on sight. To avoid this, we want to start somewhere in the wilderness. For me, I like to start in Farcreath Forest. It's a nice little starting area. Now, equipment, if you choose to start with it, it is recommended that you might want to start with either cloth or light armor. And the reason being is because vampires do gain a bonus to their sneaking. If you start in heavy armor, you'll be making so much noise regardless of the bonuses to your sneaking. So bear that in mind there. So let's maybe start with light armor there. Now, for magic, if you choose to start with it, vampires gain bonuses to their illusion spells. And they do start with an alteration spell, which is Vampiric Drain. So it may not be a bad idea to begin the game with maybe some illusion primary and alteration secondary school as your start there. In addition, if you plan on healing yourself with Magicka, there is a level 50 conjuration spell, Necromantic Empowerment, which will allow you to heal as a vampire. You will not be able to heal yourself with restoration spells, being undead and all. Now, with all that squared away, you're ready to start the game. So let's get into Chapter 2, choosing your race. Let's get into that. When choosing your race, consider the upsides and downsides that a vampire has and what races can synergize well with it. Innately, you'll have a 150% weakness to fire at the start, so choosing the Dark Elves as your race, for example, will lower your initial weakness to fire to 84%. And that will go a long way in that regard, thanks to the Dark Elf's own resistance to fire. Another example is vampires are naturally resistant to cold, getting a warmth rating of 100, and are highly resistant to frost, having a 75% frost resistance at the start of the game. Nords also gain quite a bit of frost resistance and gain some warmth rating as well, bringing this further to the extreme. Picking a proper race that can accentuate the boons or compensate for a vampire's weakness will make starting off that much easier. Now that you've created your pasty vampire, we'll now talk about how to bring some red into those cheeks. Once you enter the game, you'll begin as a Stage 4 vampire. Vampires have 4 stages, with Stage 4 being at your weakest strength but having overall more daily vampire abilities to choose from, and Stage 1 being your strongest but having the least of all your daily abilities. Vampire stages increase over time, with Stage 1 to Stage 2 taking around 6 hours in game time, and subsequent stages taking around 2 hours each. All in all, it takes 10 hours in game time to go from Stage 1 to Stage 4. Each stage is named, with Sated Thirst being Stage 1, Longing Thirst Stage 2, Overwhelming Thirst Stage 3, and finally Painful Thirst is Stage 4 and is marked in red. It is at Stage 4 that villagers and guards will start to attack you on sight. In order to lower your vampire stages, you'll need blood. Blood can be retrieved in a couple of ways, from corpses of humanoids that you kill directly yourself, feeding on seduced humanoids and feeding on sleeping humanoids, taking blood and keeping them in blood-conserving vials to be consumed later, and finally from blood kegs, which can be found in certain vampire dens. Blood is the primary way you'll be able to heal yourself at the start of your playthrough. The only other ways are drain spells, necromantic empowerment on self, and a health potion with a superlative affix, so keep that in mind. Now you know the primary means needed to stay alive, but the next question is where to find the blood necessary to do so. We'll address this in Chapter 4. When in the pursuit of prey out in the wilderness, you want to go after small camps to start off with, as camps only have a handful of enemies. And because you'll be hunting at night, you'll gain a natural advantage to stealthing towards your target, making your approach that much easier without sounding any alarms. To further aid in this is a total of 5 vampire abilities, each giving you a further edge over your prey. The spells range from Vampiric Drain, giving 40 points of health per second at Stage 1, to Vampiric Urge Daily ability, becoming available at Stage 4. Some of these spells appear and disappear depending on your vampire stages, so be wary of that. When you eventually come across a sleeping humanoid, you're going to want to feed on them. In order to do so, crouch beside your victim, then press E to interact. You'll be given a prompt asking you if you want to feed or pickpocket. Feeding on a person in this matter will do around 250 damage. If your victim survives this, the next feeding will do around 125. Assuming they survive that, then the next feeding will do no damage at all, allowing for some consistent feeding. However, if the challenge of pursuing prey is too much for a fledgling vampire, one of the easiest methods early on is to feed on the local guards sleeping in the local guardhouses. Guards generally have high enough hit points to absorb most, if not all, of your feeding attempts. The only real requirement of having access to this smorgasbord is that you must be below stage 4, painful thirst, or else you'll be spotted by the guards. When you inevitably come across combat, even at a low level, a vampire is a wrecking ball, starting with huge bonuses to both HP and stamina, as well as stamina regen. In combat, a vampire will surely win against all average enemies, using powerful attacks and devastating innate spells. There isn't much out there that will be a major threat to you in combat. However, there are some things that a vampire needs to be aware of when combating certain prey. The Dawn Guard, for example, have weapons that will do extra damage towards you, as they're both enchanted and made of silver. The same goes for the Vigilant of Stindar, that operate parallel to that of the Dawn Guard, having their own lethal means of fighting vampires and other horrors. Another mentionable is the Fire Mages. Being a vampire means vulnerabilities to flame, thus Fire Mages should be approached with caution and planning, lest you expose yourself to a flurry of fireballs. Once you've dealt with your daily chores of hunting and feeding, it'll be eventually time to look for a place to rest, which brings us to Chapter 5. Your hunting time is going to be from 7 PM to 5 AM. Once 5 AM is reached, the sun has risen to the point where it'll give you a huge maximum HP debuff to the point of death, and only gets worse the higher vampire stages are. It is possible to survive this, however, by making sure you're at stage 1, fully healed, and having picked up a blessing of RK for a health buff, allowing you to walk in the light. If you choose to walk in the day, you'll be extremely vulnerable to any attack, so be prepared to die if you find yourself in combat. Before 5 AM, however, you may want to find a roost to call your own to hide from the sun. When picking out a roost, consider the following. Does it have a bed? If not, you'll have to craft one at some point to pass the time and gain rested bonuses. Is it relatively safe? Meaning, are you sharing the area with hostile NPCs? And finally, does it have good proximity to humanoids for easy feeding? An example of a relatively nice starting roost for fledgling vampires are the sewers of Whiterun. It comes with a couple of vagabonds, allowing for emergency feeding, ease of access to the surface, and a couple of tunnels that lead to other areas. From here, you can head topside and do with the populace as you please, then make a hasty retreat down into the sewers once you're done. At a certain point, you'll be very interested in the Elixir of Blood. These elixirs will allow you to carry blood around from humanoids that you kill. The elixirs will lower your stages, as well as heal you for 100 points of damage and 5 points of health every second for 2 minutes, which also stack. Not a bad investment. In order to create these, we'll open up our perk tree and put 2 perk points into alchemy and smithing, because once you have these perks, you'll be able to create blood conserving vials directly at a forge and not at a crafting ledger. The materials needed to create these blood conserving vials are gold ingots, which can be mined or bought, venomous spittle, which comes from frostbite spiders located in various caves and in the wilderness, and building glass, which can be created quite easily by smelting empty bottles and then into fragments, then back into building glass. You can create empty bottles simply by taking any ale or wine bottle and going into your crafting ledger, then emptying the contents, and then going back to smelting it into building glass. With all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for watching this video. Now that you've mastered the basics of surviving as a vampire, you can now dominate the livestock and take their lands, homes, and people, becoming a true vampire lord. If you like videos like these and want to see more videos like them, be sure to like and subscribe. And I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.